You like this view?
Well, you have to. It's making me.
I
No.
thought TikTok was vertical. What do I know?
Yeah, I know on TikTok it is, but it told me to spin it sideways. I don't know why. You're live, sir. You're live.
Oh, sorry. Just missed my cue there. Adam Bazalgette here from the Lag Shot headquarters here in Southwest Florida. I live and work down in Southwest Florida as well, Naples, Florida. We're here with Gary and Kevin, and we are pleased you're joining us. It takes a little while for people to filter in, so happy to hear from you. I believe they type stuff in, is that right? Is that how they do it? And you type, if you would, your name, maybe where you're from would be nice. And I will try to be helpful to you. Obviously, we're in a studio. I'm not able to see you swing, but I'll do my very best. Maybe some general questions. And of course, type your questions in. And as we get rolling here in a few minutes, or as we get some momentum and get some people in, Lord willing, we will. I'll address those to the best of my ability. Appreciate everyone's interest in certainly Scratch Golf Academy, and obviously we're at the Lag Shot headquarters, but mostly just the game of golf. It's fun, you know. I'm lucky to work at a beautiful facility. If you've seen the Scratch Golf videos, you've seen how pretty Mediterra is here in Southwest Florida. Lucky to work there, but it's not just a beautiful golf course. They have, I work in it, this wonderful learning center building, cameras, TVs. It's fantastic. You can hit right out to the driving range. Of course, you can also go out on the tee, but I'm lucky enough that when I get a few spare minutes, especially early in the morning, I'll get in there and hit a few shots, whack a little shot here, hit a few shots and self-film and self-coach. So I always appreciate when golfers take an interest in their game because it's certainly something that never finishes. Nick Faldo was my boss's star, David Leadbetter's star pupil all those years ago. He was voracious. Tiger Woods, I understand, is the same way. Always looking to improve, always enjoying the process and taking an interest. So again, I appreciate your interest in golf.
One for sound, two for...
If the sound is pretty good, and I don't have a mic on, but we've got multiple cameras. If the sound's pretty good, please give us a 1. If the picture's pretty good, please give us a 2. If there's an issue, you know, obviously type something in, but you know, it's not perfect sound. I'm just talking without the microphone, but it's a little easier with all this stuff going on.
So that's what they're seeing.
Okay, great. There, you can see me there. Looks like the picture's good on our end, so put a 2 in there if the picture's good, if you would, just a few of you. And if the sound is at least reasonable, you're getting a reasonable volume. Again, it's not Hollywood, you know, quality. That's not quite our idea here, but would appreciate you put a 1 in there. But anyway, I love to film my swing and look at it. People sometimes ask me, hey, why do you think Tiger left Butch Harmon or Hank Haney, or he's had 2 or 3 other coaches? There's a simple reason, and that is not because they're not great coaches or he didn't have success with them, but because he was always trying to get better. That doesn't mean he thinks someone's a better coach than one of those guys. He just thinks maybe there's something out there for me. I've heard all this. In other words, here's a guy, best player in the world in the last 30, 40 years, possibly of all time. And he's always looking to get better. So generally speaking, because I teach golf actually full time, because I don't just do online stuff, I teach all day as my job. And I have for over 30 years. That's why I got a lot of experience doing it. I love doing it, but generally speaking, in just about anything I've come across, people tend to do what they really enjoy doing. So if someone loves music, they might sit and work on the piano a long time, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fitness comes to mind. I'm not super fit, I'm medium. I don't really love it. I don't have a lot of time, but some people, they love it, and it shows because they figure out ways to get fit, to eat healthier. So I'm glad you're a golf junkie, let's call it, and I'm glad you're doing this. So as soon as I get a couple of questions here, are we ready for the first one?
Balls. Everyone likes to see balls.
Okay, let's see if you go.
Every 2 minutes, hit a ball.
Okay.
Make sure it's registered.
There we go.
Nice.
Felt like a good swing, evidently. I hooked it. For me personally, when I don't hit the ball well, I tend to push it or hook it, which is kind of the same swing mistake, really. It's just one I roll the face closed and the other I don't. So let's rehearse. There we go. All right, just some thoughts. Down here in Southwest Florida, we're not coming to the end of our season because it's nice weather all year round. A little rainy and hot in the middle of summer, but for us, the peak season is just ending. People like to be down here in the winter, but for many, if not most of you who live in more northern climates, whether you're in North America, Canada is part of North America, obviously, but whether you're in Great Britain, some of Europe, etc., you're coming into your season. So I really suggest for people, and I suggest this anyway, but I suggest for people really get the club in your hands away from the golf course, get your grip feeling good, check your posture in front of a mirror. These are not time-consuming things, so that you have some feel. People say they like to play by feel. Everybody has to play by feel to some extent, right? You don't have a coach and a camera out there on the golf course, so you've got to get, what the thing is, you have to inform your feel. Hey, when I'm set up well, there's a mirror over here. When I'm set up well, all right, how does that feel to me? Can I map that feeling in so when I can get out to the golf course, I know at least based on feel what I'm trying to feel. There's some accuracy there. Most people literally never get a club in their hands away from the golf course, don't get in front of a mirror maybe once in a great while. They just get out there and they think, hey, whatever I'm thinking must be what's happening. That generally isn't the case.
Got some questions, Adam.
Okay, questions?
You want to take that one? Jackson from Jacksonville, Florida asked, how about some tempo drills?
Jackson from Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, tempo drills, that's the thing. Well, Scratch Golf Academy, we have our app at the App Store, and it has a tempo trainer right there with multiple options, if you like, to suit the tastes of the golfers. I would definitely do that. It's specifically for training on tempo. But just to touch on it, on a full swing, a lot of research, not by me, but a lot of research in the golf community has gone on, and they've found that top players nearly always have a timing ratio where the backswing takes 3 times longer than does the time it takes to go from top of backswing back to the ball. 3-to-1 ratio. That's what that feature in the app in the tools section is about. But they find that some players, you could say someone like the late great Payne Stewart, was kind of a long, languid swinger with a lot of length. He was on a overall slower 3-to-1 cadence, nonetheless 3-to-1. Then you've got golfers like Tom Watson, Nick Price, much more brisk rhythm, much more speed in there. They were also 3-to-1, but again on a slightly shrunken, more sped up tempo. So the key is flow and keep it moving. Check the app out. But one final comment. What I find most of the time, back in my Leadbetter days, I used to put Ernie Els, the poster child for smooth tempo, next to their swing, same amount of frames. He would always get to the ball before the amateur student. So smooth, not necessarily slow is what you want. If people get too deliberate and slow, they either don't hit the ball very far or they've got to jerk the club down to create speed. So smooth, but a 3-to-1 count is what I would recommend on any full shot.
Perfect. Todd from Northern New Jersey would like to discuss swing path and avoiding a consistent pull that he's struggling with. Does more lag help with this problem?
Todd from Northern New Jersey, yes. So it sounds to me like
You got to repeat the question so these guys
okay,
can hear.
Todd from Northern New Jersey just wants to discuss swing path. Sounds like Todd's pulling the ball. I'm assuming he's a right-hander based on national averages. So that would mean your swing is probably coming out to in, almost certainly coming out to in, which is far the most common type of tendency and fault people have. Okay, here's the basic thing I would say now. I'm assuming you have a reasonable grip, which may not be the case. Sometimes if people have a weak grip and the club face is open, they've almost got to swing over the top to sort of salvage the ability to hit the ball on line. But here's the thing, Todd. As you swing the club down, my friend, here's what happens. Generally speaking, your body is what's going to make the club come out towards the ball, and the release of your arms there, the straightening of the back arm, is what's more or less going to get it to come down. You want to make a swing over here, Kevin? We'll demonstrate with you.
He never does this with me because I'm right-handed.
Well, exactly. Gary's my man, but he's left-handed, and it's his handicap. Take a backswing.
All right, hold on. Let's introduce everybody here. I want to say hey to everybody on Gary's TikTok channel right here. We got YouTube over here. We're going to go live with another one here in a minute. Hey guys, welcome. At TikTok, start putting in your questions. Adam's going to be here to answer them. We're going to stay here for an hour, get all your questions answered from a 3-time PGA Teacher of the Year.
Okay, great. Appreciate that, Gary. So continue hitting at the corner there, so that's about down the line for the golfer. Maybe a little more this way. Great. Okay, take a backswing. So as we look at Kevin, Certainly the body should lead, but in the case of someone coming over the top, they shouldn't lead with so much body rotation. That brings it out. They should get some release of that trail arm. In other words, get the club down before their body turns as much. Again, that doesn't mean the body's not nudging to the front foot and leading. So I would emphasize, if you picture my shoe back here as a huge nail, and if Kevin had to whack that into the ground, that's the key. Can you see how that's coming from the inside? Then your body gets a little bit more of its rotation and brings it round. So I'd emphasize that. Get the club down before you get it out there. Sorry, Kevin.
No problem.
Kevin is a golf pro, by the way, just so you know how we got to such a good top of the backswing position. Here's one other little tip in there, though. People, without realizing it, much more than they think, at a subconscious level, when they see the ball over there, they swing towards the golf ball. When you look at a great golfer and you draw a line, as I do on TV for people every day at the Golf Learning Center, golf ball to club, the club doesn't go straight towards the ball. It comes down somewhat as it comes around. So hopefully that's helpful.
Hit one.
Hit one? Okay, let's see. It's not quite that angle. There we go. It was dead straight, even though it didn't register.
It was.
What? Okay, no worries, no worries. Okay, what other questions do we have here?
Robert from Jacksonville, Florida. Can you please go over drills regarding the downswing and after impact of the ball?
Robert, Jacksonville, Florida. Downswing drills, what happens after impact? Well, again, it somewhat depends. There's so many possibilities. It somewhat depends what your problem is. Usually, for most people, and let's assume a reasonable grip and backswing, most people are either too much out here, too steep. That's most people. Some people, me included, sometimes get the club a little too stuck behind them that way. So you want to work on the drills that are relative to your tendencies. We'll show you one other category here in a moment. But you probably got some information basically based on what we just said. So we were talking about our earlier friend there coming this way and what to do. In the case of someone like me that gets the club too far here, I need to focus on using my body rotation more and getting a little bit more this way. So try to customize whatever drill you want to use based on what your tendencies are. Now, just a quick word, then we'll look at the other category. If you're like me, your straight shots when you're swinging this way will fly too far to the right with the option to roll the face and hook it. If you're like the previous guy with a question, your straight shots, the pulls will fly left with the option to leave the face open and cut it. Now, the other thing, touching on the downswing, is from this angle. And just remember, the club should always increase in wrist cock as you come forward. If I was cracking a whip, something like that, you see how that thing loads a little bit? If your wrists are mobile, again, we'll assume a good grip, and your sequence is correct. That is to say, you get some weight bump with passive wrists. The club is going to gather and get closer to you to whatever level your flexibility in your wrists and shoulders allows it to. Very important though, because it stores power. A wide swing on the way down is always going to move more slowly, and very importantly, it allows you to get the bottom of your swing past the ball. So many people, club comes down too early, weight gets stuck on the back foot. I've honestly yet to meet the person that without a club couldn't shift their weight. I've yet to meet that person. And yet you meet people every day in golf that for 30 years have never gotten their weight to the left side. So it's almost always a case of too much acceleration before you move. Let the club load, let your weight bump to the left. And hopefully that's some thoughts for your downswing drills.
Got a couple questions over here.
Yep, TikTok
So we
guys.
have, hey guys on TikTok, please share this. Please hit that thumbs up. Please smash that like button. Share some gifts for Adam. We have a couple questions over here. One was, he hits it really high and he loses a lot of distance. How can we get more of a low ball flight so that we can get more distance out of every hit?
Okay, well the previous question would somewhat address that. Almost certainly, and in fact I can think, let's say certainly, you don't have enough forward shaft lean at impact. These clubs are not built to be hit with the shaft vertical irons. They're built to be hit with the shaft leaning forward. That does a couple of things. It tilts the sweet spot against the ball. You create more pressure against the ball when you do that. And when the ball is struck with the shaft leaning forward, the divot or the point of contact with the ground happens after impact. When you get to this way, your tendency is to pick it, hit the ground first, and of course shoot it in the air. So when anything's difficult for you, do it on a scale that you can do it on, i.e. smaller and slower. So I would make some little swings, get a little bump of weight, and try to lean the club forward. And not just that, Practice, get your lead hand, tilt loft off the club, literally like that. You should be tilting loft off the club, and with the handle forward, the face is square. So picture tilting loft and letting the flow take the handle past the ball. I've got an 8-iron here, and I hit that this high in the air, granted only a few yards. Practice little ones doing that. You will be a much better iron player for it. Not only a better trajectory, hit it further, but more consistent sort of distance control. What else have we got there, lads?
Yeah. So hold on, I got one. So on TikTok, I just showed Adam the videos that he did where his head doesn't move still at all through the swing. Now, this is a good one. We have people over here on YouTube saying, should my head move? How do I get it to not move? I want you to answer this. Does it need to move? Stay still? What's your take on the head? Should it be still? Should I?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
a lot
let's
of
say
people
one
are
thing-
struggling with this
sure.
one.
Let's say one thing out of it, just as a beginning. Your head is really a reference for the top of your axis. Your axis is your spine. So in almost any case I've ever seen, and I've seen millions of swings probably in 30 plus years of teaching, it isn't that people move their head, it's their body motion is bad, those sort of things, or they get the club in a place where their body has to move badly to recover from it. So focus on your pivot more than your head, and if you pivot well, your head will stay fairly still. You stand up straight like I am, which is easier than a golf pivot, and turn your shoulders, your head isn't going to move anywhere. It might move 1/4 of an inch, but nothing drastic. So sure, centered, steady, stable axis makes it a lot easier to deliver the club the same way. Have there been a few great players with a little bit of movement? Yeah, a little bit, but the goal is pretty darn centered until the ball's struck, and then the energy should bring your head around a little bit. Practice your pivot. Here's a quick tip for you relative to the backswing. If your head moves that way, it's almost certain your turn is too level. That leans your body this way. If your head goes this way, it's almost certain you're extending your right side too much and your turn is too vertical like that. So practice without the club to where you can pivot those shoulders around you and your head naturally stays pretty still. If you're finding it moves all over the place, the problem is your pivot isn't correct. Does that sound fair?
Yep. Hey, so we want to see the perfect takeaway. Guys on TikTok, smash that thumbs up. Share this live, please. Let's get this thing going. We don't do this very often. We've got a 3-time PGA Teacher of the Year. Let's get this thing out there, guys. Come on, bump this up for us.
Okay.
Let's see the perfect takeaway. Is there a perfect way that we should do it?
Yeah. Okay.
Or should we not do it?
Yeah.
Maybe a couple
I
things?
would say, as viewed from here, we're looking at the shape of the swing. If you look at the design of the club, I don't have a line on the screen, but the club should track up that line, almost right where your hands are and beyond that. If the club's underneath your hands, it's too flat. This isn't so bad, but it's too steep. Here's the real key to it, though. Don't try to manufacture it by placing the club and putting it in places. That never works, or it never works for very long. What I see most people do wrong versus the best of players is most people, I think, I mean, you're feeling the club in these hands, right? That's what you're holding the club with. Most people take the club back and get the club moving, too much movement here. The best players in the world, generally speaking, as they start to move with their body, the club just reacts to that. This way more, which keeps it on plane. The great majority of people are here. So if you can get the club, picture a long beach towel. If I'm going to snap it, that end of the towel reacts to my hand movement and reacts to me. So let the club react to you. Previous question was about the pivot. Hey, listen, if you've got a good pivot and the club's reacting to that, you most probably are going to have a pretty good takeaway.
Awesome. Mike from Columbus. Mike from Columbus would like to see some anti-flipping tips.
Mike from Columbus, anti-flipping tips. That's good, Mike. First thing I would do is check and see, is there a reason for it to flip? And usually the most common reason I see is players aren't able to square the club very effectively. The ball tends to stay, in the case of the right-hander, off to the right. Typically a weak grip or it's too much in the palm. So really the only way they can get the ball online, or one of the ways they can, is to lash the club head a little bit to close it. So here's a very important key. Squaring the club face or letting it closed isn't a matter of all of this. It's a matter of that. turn the club face. So if you're having a problem with this, hold the club up in front of you and just turn it where it looks more at the ground. Whatever your wrist feels like when it does that is more what your wrist needs to feel like at impact. Now, if you have a little bit more of a grip in the fingers and a little bit stronger, you don't have to feel as drastic a movement. The old weak Ben Hogan grip, which served him well, requires a lot of this supination of the wrist. So experience what that feels like. If you can arrive at impact more like that, as I push my hips forward, the face is square, you won't be a flipper. Again, you've got to practice these things on a small scale, so get an 8 or a 9 iron, pop some little shots and tilt loft off the club, and in order not to hit it left, drive the hips and the hands forward a bit. Nice, firm, punchy little shots like that. You'll get the feeling for getting rid of it. You really will.
Will you demonstrate that?
I will demonstrate that. This is an 8 iron. I'm going to hit it a fairly short distance. See how low that came off? See my little finish? My wrist is pointed down, the club's like that. And just a word to the wise. We've talked a couple of times about little miniature shots to work on your impact. For a drill like this, and for most impact drills, you want to be finished with the club down here under control so it's firm. You see great players much more like that than like this through the ball. Most people, once that ball's underneath them, they lash the club up here. They never even notice it. They're looking at the ball so much. So pay attention, not just to the ball, but look down. Have I got the loft tilted off? Is the club firm and in front of me?
Awesome. Flores Locos from San Diego, California. He's a huge fan, or she's a huge fan. She's probably hitting her driver. What is one piece of advice for the beginner golfer?
Okay, it's Dolores, is it?
Flores.
Flores.
Locos in San
Nice to
Diego.
hear you. Nice to see you, Flores, there in San Diego. Problems hitting the driver. She's a beginning golfer. One of the problems with beginning golfers, and perhaps juniors and ladies and some of the older seniors more than the 25-year-old guys, is it takes a bit of speed to hit a driver well. But so, hey, you got to work on that a little bit. The other thing that I think is the biggest single thing I see, and I'm going to grab a lady lag shot driver here. Nice new product they've got coming out. It's a flexible training club, but it's a hittable driver. And the problem I see most of the time, picture the design of this club. This lag shot club's built to be coming at this sort of angle. In other words, the club's more behind me in the downswing, what we call in golf more of a shallow hit, not a steep hit. And most of the time when I see new golfers struggling, especially with the driver, new golfers period, honestly, there's too much hitting at the ball, the club comes down, there is not enough loft on this thing to get it in the air properly unless you hit more this way. So make some little practice swings where you feel the club's more down behind your back leg there like that with a couple of little pumps, and then feel it come much more along the ground to the golf ball like that. So its approach to impact is very level. Once you've mastered that on a fairly small scale, you won't be chopping into the ground and breaking tees so much, you'll be picking it off the tee. Then add some speed in there. You probably need a driver with a fair amount of loft, 12, 14 degrees, and I think you'll do okay, Loris. Hope so.
I got one over here.
Okay.
My buddy Joe, Golf Jiu-Jitsu. What's up, bud?
Now, Joe,
I'm gonna come over here and read the question.
So he says, when my club is parallel on the downswing, the club is way behind my right leg.
Oh, okay, probably looking from here, it's here. That's my tendency when I struggle. To be honest with you, it's like, I don't know, having too much money or too hair or something. It's not the worst problem in the world because you can hit it a lot harder from here and at least you can draw the ball or hook it a little bit. It's much better than being from here, but nonetheless, it's a problem. So I would probably say, I'm guessing you're a fairly low handicapper. It's not usually the high handicappers that have that situation. There's one of two things that could be happening, generally speaking. Either, number one, you could be pushing your hips towards the ball a bit. They call this early, the hips extending early. That tends to drop the club in. Usually you see these tour players, their body angles are pretty consistent through the ball. And the other one, and perhaps the most likely one, is your trunk isn't turning enough through the ball. So you've got 4 segments in golf that they measure in 3D motion capture. Hips, upper trunk, thoracic, arms, club. Those are the effective links of the chain as you go. And usually for lower handicap players that get the club stuck, the hips fly out there, the club comes down, but this doesn't turn enough. And since the arms are stuck to the chest isn't turning enough to get the club back in front of you. So I would hit some little shots, feel your legs are stable. You've probably got enough leg action. They're not going to be stable, but relatively arms passive, not thrusting down, and get this son of a gun to turn more. Just one last picture for you. You can see I'm aiming at about the black top on the corner here. If I had to throw it at the couches over there, just had to throw the club, you could bet my chest wouldn't be here. My chest would be like that to throw it over there. So you need more of segment 2.
Question. Carol Kirkpatrick, where on the ball is best to contact to get the most visits?
Well, Carol Kirkpatrick, where on the ball is the best to contact? I mean, listen, the reason a driver goes so much farther than, say, a pitching wedge, let's assume X amount of speed and centered contact. The nearer the equator you hit it, the more pressure is applied to the ball. Same amount of speed hitting it down here spins the ball and shoots it up in the air. Of course, you want that for a wedge. You don't want the ball going low and hard. So you need to take the sweet spot of this club that's about 3-4 grooves up. This is an 8-iron. And as we said to a caller earlier, or a right in, you've got to tilt that against the ball a little bit. And when you de-loft it slightly, which is supposed to happen, you will apply pressure much better to the ball. Most people come in too much this way, they're adding loft, the ball skids up into the air like that. So based on your question, try to hit it with less effective loft. We've had a couple of questions along those lines. I think you'll hit it farther.
All right, so
Nonsense Luminous, I'll send you a message on
I
that.
can't really do anything here for there, but John from Ottawa says, I've been told that my right shoulder closes too quickly ahead of my club head. Any advice? Right shoulder closes too quickly.
My guess would be, you know what you're saying there, John from Ottawa, is that your right shoulder is kind of coming out and forcing the club over the top. That wouldn't really be called closing, but you could call it that. It's probably what you're talking about. I mean, we talked a little bit with Kevin over here a wee while ago that, hey, if you picture this, okay, relative to that. If I was skipping a rock, which requires a very nice shallow angle into the water, unless I wanted to chuck into the lake, if I was skipping a rock, what would my body motion look like? Would it look like a bump of weight and this? Yes. Would it look like a whole lot of upper body motion? No, because I throw the thing into the lake. Let me just slightly sidetrack here for a second because it might be helpful to you and others. I find that most golfers, they get over the ball, they're so stuck there thinking about what to do and trying to hit a solid shot, they really don't experience much freedom to make a change. So picture in your own mind, if we got 10, 20-year-old people that have never swung a golf club, and we stood them on the edge of a frozen lake with clubs, no ball, clubs in their hands, and we said, okay, anybody that can get it to slide across the ice and skip out there and not break the ice but go as far into the lake is the winner. Do you really think anybody would swing like that? Not a single person of 10 people that had never played golf would likely swing like that. So in other words, people don't generally apply contexts of other things they do. The mind and the body are incredibly gifted and wired up. People do amazing things with their body all day that they just take for granted. So again, if you had to skip a rock or throw a club, what would you do? Your body would find it a little bit. And I might start, if I was you, by mentally picturing, hey, if I had to side on kind of throw this club along the ground, what would my body motion feel like? I think that might be a good way to go about it. A little bit of this and let it go.
We've got a couple questions about the perfect grip or the best grip.
Okay, the perfect grip or the best grip, usually the place to start's the lead hand, the glove hand. By far, and I know what I'm talking about here because I do this all day with people, by far the biggest tendency is to grip it too far into the palm. You've got two big pads on your hand, the hypothenar eminence and the, I know because I teach doctors so they correct me, and the thenar, probably getting it wrong, probably reversing it, the thenar eminence and the hypothenar, this big pad here, let's call it that. If you relax your hand, the human hand doesn't hang like that, it hangs like that. So first mistake, people stretch their hand and stick it onto the club and then they gets their wrist in a bad position, it rolls up there. Relax your hand. You tell me next time you watch golf on TV, how often you've seen a player staring at their hand. Well, it never happened. It has never happened. They'll grab that club and they'll just grab it with that left hand in a natural, relaxed way. So whether you choose to do it more in front of you at an angle this way, I like this because your hand hangs more that way. You'll notice as I do that, I'm not up here. I'm back there with some angle between the club and my arm. Let the natural curl of the pinky, I'm going to try to show you here, Let it just diagonally sit there. So I feel, here's the key, that pad gives me leverage, allows me to hinge. My fingers are a lot stronger than my palm anyway, and this on top allows that. That's the trick to it. When you do that, you'll most probably see 2-3 knuckles. You'll see a little bit of angle there. That's perhaps less critical. You certainly see this a lot when people grip it in the palm. Let me tell you, this is a pretty hard game to begin with. You grip it up in the palm, you have got to be so physically strong and coordinated to make that work. So to me, relax the hand, in the fingers more, leverage where that pad's on top is the key I would do. Right hand just kind of up against the side of the club there, not way on top, not way underneath. And also, right hand more diagonally in the fingers. I feel it in my thumb and forefinger, not like that. Hopefully that helps.
Very good.
Cody from Ohio. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Cody.
Tips for getting your hands unstuck on the driver swing.
Cody, it's tips for getting your driver unstuck. Is that what it says?
Your hands unstuck on the driver swing.
Well, I'm not 100% sure what you mean, but I possibly and probably mean your hands grabbing too much tension, just getting them a little more passive in the swing. If that's the case, and it very likely is because it is for a lot of people, the thing we just said about the grip's really important. Once that thing's under there, in fact, there's a picture in the famous Ben Hogan book, 5 Fundamentals of Modern Golf, where he's balancing it with one finger on the club, this index finger right here, and under that pad. Once you've gripped it where you have mobility, hey listen, your fingers are strong. I hold this out often to students and say, grab that club head there standing at the end, give it a pull, and they'll pull. My arms will be soft enough to go, but that thing isn't coming out too easily. So if you shake someone's hand, give them a decent handshake, it doesn't mean your arm has to be rigid. Just a little bit of pressure. So enough pressure, it's not flying out, but soft enough through the wrists and arms that as you move, you can use this thing a little bit more like a whip and feel where the club head is. By the way, this is the lady version, but this lag shot's great for that because there's a little extra weight and there's a lot of extra flex. It is a great training club to pick up this all-important feel. But that's the combination you're looking for. You want a combination of mobility so you can create some lash, but enough grip pressure you can have a little bit of control over the club. You have to play around with the club. Get away from the ball and play around with it till you feel that. Hopefully that's helpful.
So Dad Bod Benji over here is asking how he can fix his slice. And honestly, the easiest way to fix your slice would be just to strengthen your grip up and then see what the ball flight does, right?
So that would be a good idea, yeah, for sure.
Look at how your grip is, and then if it's weak, or if it is strong already, let's say he has a strong grip, and he's still slicing it out to the right.
Okay.
Then what would we do? If our grip is good,
Yeah.
what would be the correction?
What Gary's meaning, which he's correct, with a strong grip. Listen, if I had a steering wheel and a hook is turning it that way, a slice is open, where would I want to grip the wheel if I had to hook it? Over here more, right? I can turn the wheel harder. So when your hand is more over there, it is easier to roll the face close. That's what we're talking about with a stronger grip. But as Gary says, sometimes even a reasonable grip doesn't do the job. One thing is certain, unless Newton proves to be a complete idiot, and that is your club face is routinely open or aimed right as you hit it. They figured out with super high-speed photography 2-3 decades ago in golf, something they never knew, and in fact they taught the opposite in the PGA. I was taught to do the opposite through the PGA, not their fault, before the technology came along. And they always used to say, hey listen, the direction you're swinging, they call it the swing path, that determines start direction. This assumes solid hit. Subsequent to the start, it will curve if the face isn't right. That's not true at all. The primary determiner of start direction is club face. You cannot live your life with an open face through the ball. So you've got to do a little bit what Gary said. Get a shorter club, get your grip decent, play around, be a kid again. Hold it up in front of you. That is going to hit it so far left, it'll almost knock your left ankle off. You've got to find some of that in the downswing. So get some little shots, some 60-yarders, and snap that bugger. And one final tip, don't wait till you're at the front door to try to get the face shut. Back in this area, feel that face tumbling down this way so it's coming into the hitting area more that way. I said one final tip, let me throw one more on that. Make sure you gradually work the feel in where you don't confuse feel-wise the feeling of turning the face with turning the entire ship this way. Just turn the face. When you can get an 8-iron, hit it 80 yards and snap hook it, you will have changed your golf life. Hope that helps.
Thank you, sir.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Pete from Australia.
Wow.
Australian in the building. He keeps topping his woods and would like some ideas, some of your ideas why he's doing it. Topping his woods.
Give you a little shot of the
Pete from
Yeah.
Australia.
Okay, Pete from Australia. I'm trying to do my mental calculations. It's probably about 8 in the morning for you, unless you're out west in east in Perth. Which way would it? West in Perth. Anyway, I've always wanted to go to Australia, so it's good to talk to you, Pete. So topping the woods, my experience is as such. Now, wood is a long club without a lot of loft. When golfers come down too vertically at the ball this way, steeply, what happens is, picture this. If I had my right hand here, if I came down here, I'm going down at the ground. If I come here, I'm going much more along the ground. This brushes more. So usually what happens, people create too much angle of attack, too much steepness, but they're smart enough not to bury the club in the ground, so they do one of two things. They either raise their body up, or just as commonly, honestly, they pull their arms in a bit. So my best guess, or let's say the most common thing I see, too much steepness followed by a bailout of that. So what I would do, I'd make some little baby swings, get a 7-wood or a 5-wood, no ball initially, feel like the club's more behind your leg, pump it a couple of times, feel like it's got a long level spot, probably that long. And once this thing's nice and level, you can afford to commit to some width in the swing and a brush mark. Final analogy I think is helpful. My dad was a Royal Air Force pilot in World War II. If a plane comes in like this, you have to shallow it out. If it comes in like this, you can commit to thumping off the runway without snapping the wheels off. So if you can come in shallow, level spot, you can start to commit to brushing the ground.
Justin from North Carolina. Any tips for pitching from 50 to 75 yards?
Hey Justin from North Carolina, probably a couple of tips. I think what they've proven really works best, and some of this is equipment based, a good performance ball that spins and a reasonably clean wedge. But they've proven that the best, picture something for a second, say, no, I'm not going to be able to throw a ball 60 yards, but I'm throwing it 15 yards into a bucket. Would I have more accuracy throwing it miles in the air and hoping it landed in the bucket? Or would it be just moderate height and trying to angle it in this way? Moderate height is the answer. So the best pitchers, if you stand near them, the guys that are playing on the TV and the gals, they're hitting it with less loft, they're driving it in there, I'm not going to say low, but relatively low with a good deal of spin. So two things you could do. Number one, practice, we've dealt with this earlier in the show, you may not have been around, but practice the feeling of de-lofting the club, letting the weight transfer so you're hitting it lower. Don't get a target initially, just get the club and hit some low ones. And start to bring it in there with a bit of spin and crispness. Your distance control will be better. If you find that very difficult and you're a little bit this way, don't pitch it with a 58 or 56, pitch it with a gap wedge. You'll come in a little bit lower and you'll spin it just fine. Final thing, make sure that club face is clean. A little bit of dirt and grass stains on that face, the ball will skid off it and won't spin so much. Hopefully that's helpful.
Robert Romero for Gary, who's going to add on TikTok. What's the handle on TikTok? Robert Romero.
So Scratch Golf and Gary Guerrero and Lag Shot. Go
Excellent.
follow us, guys.
Wonderful. We appreciate the opportunity to try to help you out. I'm stretching.
Me as chair.
Probably.
Justin from South Carolina. Any checkpoints for hands, wrists, or arms when I'm shallowing the club?
Justin, South Carolina, checkpoints for hands, wrist, arms when the club's shallowing. I mean, if you go on YouTube or whatever and look at different top players' swings, Fred Couples does not have the club in the same position as Sergio Garcia coming down. They don't have the same swing style. Justin Rose probably somewhere in the middle. So there are some windows, but things you would generally see once, assuming your camera angle is about this high and it's properly lined up. By the way, guys and gals, if you film yourself, always put something on the ground, a club or whatever, between your feet and the ball and line the camera up down that. It's difficult unless you film all the time to get that angle right. And if you get a skewed angle, all these references don't work. So with the cameras between toes and ball, it's about this height. Here's a couple of references. When the left arm is parallel to the ground, your hands will look still in front of your shirt, not back there, not way out there, and the club should be below your shoulder. The club will then should get reasonably close to that right forearm coming in. You see how that looks for me? If it's much above that, that's a no-go, nor do you want to see your hands well out away from you. So hands are somewhat underneath me, club is sort of bicep, nearer the right forearm coming in. If you get those things looking about like that, you're close enough. As I say, there are some parameters based on swing styles and flexibility levels, if you like, through the shoulder and right wrist.
The golf hacker asks, what is the significance of the right hand for a right-handed player?
The golf hacker, is that the name? Okay. Well, the significance of the right hand for the right-handed player, the trail hand, let's say. This is an interesting one. Let me help you. Let me kneel down to stretch myself. I can see you guys a little bit better. Johnny Miller and Ben Hogan both had very similar, Johnny Miller's a way bigger guy than Ben Hogan, both had very weak grips, very bowed hands as they hit it, a lot of similarities in the way they went through the ball. Johnny Miller used to say it's entirely a left-handed game, that's the way he played it. Ben Hogan had a famous saying, he's quoted as saying, when he's playing his best, he wished he had two right hands to lash it with. So always remember this, the ball doesn't react to what you're thinking about. It reacts to what the club's doing, only. That's obvious, but people seem to forget that. They think, where should I look to make the ball go straight? The ball doesn't react to where you look. Look wherever helps you deliver the club the best. So here's the thing, I mean, listen, you're an athlete, hopefully, to some extent playing golf, notwithstanding the, is it golf hacker moniker? Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun. To me, if you're playing a sport, baseball, tennis, golf, to feel like this thing's an enemy and you shouldn't use it, I just don't think that's the right way to go about it. Again, Johnny Miller would beat the daylights out of me. He felt it all with his left hand, so feel what works for you. But I think if your ducks are in a row, and there's a lot of ducks to get in a row in golf, but if the club's on a decent plane and decent balance, the face is fairly square, you don't necessarily have to think about either arm, but for goodness sake, and if I'm hitting a baseball, surely the trail arm helps to some extent to apply pressure. So I feel like it should load and then apply pressure much as it would in baseball or tennis. And I would not personally shy away from that feel, using that arm or feeling it if it helps you.
Awesome.
So yep.
I've never really done TikTok much, but these are probably, each answer is the length of 11 TikTok videos, so sorry about that if you're a TikTok audience.
So Lucky Luke on TikTok is asking, do we keep the left arm straight at impact?
Okay, I would say overwhelmingly amongst great players, the answer would be yes. Are there a couple of exceptions? A little bit, yeah. So I think you'll see a number of top players, probably lat flexibility, etc., where, hey, late in the backswing, the arm folds a touch. There's overall plenty of width. It's not like that. But there's a little softness there. There's plenty that are straight as well. But I think it's very rare to see a great player that isn't pretty darn straight as they hit it. Let me hit a shot here. I'm going to hit one in slow motion. Like that. And I think one of the reasons is, hey, if you're going to hit something hard, you've got to have some support. Have you ever seen a Major League Baseball player hit a home run like that? I've never seen that. So you've got to strike the thing. The other thing is this club's heavy at high speed. If you're using it properly, as all these great players do, hey, it loads, it stores energy, then there's a tremendous snap and sort of pop of the club head. It should be enough to straighten those arms out. What I see a lot of times with people through the ball, the energy's gone out of the club, they've released it, the club's passing the hands, the body isn't moving enough, and this is the sort of result. So I'm not going to say this is isolated in and of its own. It's a lot, oftentimes, to do with other things in the swing, but yes, we like it pretty straight. Who's the British golfer I like so much, whose name I can't think of now?
Tommy?
Lee Westwood. Lee Westwood's a little bit like that as he hits it. He's a strong guy, the club isn't flipping around, and Ricky Fowler earlier in his career especially is a little bit like that. Jordan Spieth's a little bit bent in that area, not too much at impact, so there's a few exceptions. Lanny Watkins, if you're a fan of golf in the 70s and 80s, he's a touch like that as well. Probably before any TikToker was born, but Lanny Watkins was a great player, I'm telling you. Okay.
Give you a stretch or a breath. So we got a lot of people thanking Adam for the time. We got a lot of people asking for drills. download the Scratch Golf Academy app in your app store. You've got drills and access to a lot of information there from the best, from the Gray Goat here. And you've got all that at your fingertips mobily. So take a look at that. Thanks for you guys coming in too. I got another question here.
Yeah.
Would you please discuss, we got a scratch golfer, okay? So Sean Thompson,
Hey, Sean.
scratch golfer, how do I fix a ball? Or what causes the ball starting left of the target line? I'm a scratch golfer that's had issues with this lately. Sean Thompson.
So Sean's a scratch golfer and he starts the ball left of the target line.
Yes.
The question would be, and I know we're not a live interaction, most of the time a scratch golfer, he's not a scratch golf audience guy, he's a scratch golfer.
Scratch golfer.
Okay, you should probably be watching me hit balls. But most of the time, for a better player like you are, for a really good player, it's more club face closing. I have not too often seen a really strong player like you swing a whole lot to the left. I mean, maybe a drip. So my best guess is it's a little too much face closing, and I would bet on your worst pulls, it probably has some curve on it too, which would be indicative of that as well. Again, club face is enough to start the ball left. So if I was you, I would hit some shots, make sure you're not blocking to the right too much because you'll have to release the club, but I would hit some shots where you feel like the lead hand as you come in, we go at the camera, is a little closer to you in here, so the handle is actually beginning to track around you. Picture a slap shot in hockey, which I don't really know anything about, but picture that. That needs to be getting closer. When that's closer and the triceps in close, you have much more ability to prevent the club from whipping closed. This club's heavy at high speed, so I'd hit a few little punch shots, see if you can feel that nice connection and keep the face a little more open through impact.
We got a good question about the lag shot here.
Okay, what's the question about
His
lag
name
shots?
is G. Weedy. He's asking if the lag shot driver can help you feel or promote more lag.
Yes,
Feel.
that's what it's about.
I'm guessing probably feel more lag. So the longer the club, the more it's going to have this kind of a
Right,
flex to
right.
it. We have a junior club here that we had custom made for a very short kid. And this is a custom one, but this thing barely has any flex,
Yeah.
where this thing has a lot of flex. So yes, definitely the longer the club. But the good thing about the driver is it's really going to help promote a more shallow swing plane, which will help attack from
Absolutely.
the inside. It really helps you drop it down. You can't cast the lag shot driver. It's really going to help you feel the load and the lag. And I'm going to let Adam go ahead and explain the benefits of the driver.
Well, you know, what people generally do that don't lag the club well, I mean, it could be grip, could be a few things, but generally speaking, at rock bottom, they force the club towards the ball too early. That's why it doesn't lag. I mean, picture a baseball player. What's the last thing to move is the bat, right? And when that happens, it lags a little bit. People are impatient with golf. They stare at the ball, they want to hit it. So here's the thing with this club. I mean, certainly it's possible to swing it badly, but it's pretty difficult. When I make my move, it creates bend in there. This is too flexible for me to force the head down too early. Picture a towel. If you snapped a towel like that, that thing's so soft, it's impossible to get the end of the towel to move too early. So you can see as I move there how that lags. And that definitely helps, as Gary's referring to, swing plane. If the club's lagging, it's generally going to stay pretty well behind you. One other thing, we were talking about this before the show, I find that most people, and this is most people honestly that play golf, they've never really lagged the club that well. Consequently, because they're usually more like this, they've never quite experienced the feeling of the transfer of energy and the snap of the club at the bottom. So not just the lag, the release. So this thing really promotes that as well, because I'm telling you, once that baby's stored up here, unless you let go of the club or start breathing, it is going to snap down there, and you start to experience that wonderful load and snap. Listen, these guys on TV, they're young, they're strong. They couldn't hit the ball 320 yards with arm speed. I'm telling you, the club head speed has to be exponential to the body speed. So what they're good at, hey, they're strong, but they're good at creating that fantastic crescendo of speed right at the bottom. That's why they can hit it so far. Freddie Couples was one of the greats. Made it look easy, looked like he was swinging smoothly. If you stand next to him hitting a ball, there's so much club head speed right at the precise moment. It's incredible. This thing really helps with that feel. And of course, feel is a little easier to learn the game from than just do this, and do that. So yeah, lag shot's great.
Yeah. Quan Kim, should all clubs have the same shaft stiffness?
Quan. You know, honestly, Quan, I'd say generally, should all clubs have the same shaft stiffness? Let's say a set of irons. You know, driver could be a little different or whatnot. Obviously, putter is a different animal. I would say generally, yes, they make sort of standardized clubs. Now, club specs have become such a science of their own, and there's so many adjustable features on clubs these days, and kick points and all these things in the shafts, that you really, if you're really going to invest, you know, $1,200 in a set of golf clubs, maybe a little more if it's a good set of clubs. The driver alone is probably $400. Take the time to go to someone that's an expert club fitter, that has a TrackMan or a Flight Scope, that has the launch monitor, that can give you all the data, that's good at it. There's plenty in every town. And get them to look at what you're doing, so that whatever you're doing, they can maximize your ability by putting the right shaft flex, the right kick point, the right head weight, the right lofts, all that in your hands. It costs like $150, $200 to go through an entire fitting with a quality fitter, and it's worth it. You'll use those clubs for years, so I would defer to someone like that. But rock bottom, yes, the irons should all have about the same flex.
Awesome. This is Macy on TikTok. What's your biggest golf tip?
Macy.
Most important golf tip.
Honestly,
What is your best golf tip is what it says.
I would say the grip, but that's so boring, I'm not going to say the grip, Macy. Best golf tip. Best golf tip, I think, is to, generally speaking, try to get a swing where the golf club is reacting to you in an athletic way that way. Think of it in your mind, if I had to toss the club straight down the range at the angle it's designed on, it's not that difficult to do with that ball. Can I create an environment where I'm creating the club reacting to me, and I'm reacting more to the target than I am to the ball? That as a sort of underpinning, I think, is the best thing. People grab this club, they're reacting almost entirely to the ball, not the target, and their little muscles here are lashing the club, and that's why their swings don't look good. So hopefully that's helpful.
What I would recommend is repetition.
Certainly repetition.
Burning in muscle memory with a lag shot 7-iron swing trainer.
Yeah, lag shot 7-iron's great. It really condones, or
It gets you in
right
that
word.
plane, it teaches you that plane, it
supports
keeps
that
you on
movement,
that
it
plane.
encourages it. And honestly, what Gary's saying there, lag shot would be great. If you don't have one, they're easy to pick up, right? Lagshotgolf.com.
Yeah.
But do some swinging away from the golf course. I'm telling you, I do this full time for 30 years, so I've had a lot of chance to talk to people, to see what they're getting at, visit with them. The great majority of people, the only time the club's in their hand, there's a ball underneath them, and they are going at this thing like a wild animal on the 18th hole of the US Open trying to hit a shot. It is so difficult to feel things and to create good habits that way. Get the club in your hand a minute or two at a time, a small time commitment at the house. Create some feels and some habits you like. When you do get to the range, you will be so much better off for it. I mean, picture this. If you were learning martial arts and someone's teaching you how to move, but while you're doing that, we're going to send a young person out to try to smash your teeth down your throat. Do you think you're going to pick up much in your drill? No. So most people, they get that ball, they're trying to kill this thing and hit it straight. They really don't get much change. Take the poison out of it. Make some practice swings.
Awesome. Teddy Halpin, junior golfer here. Wanted some tips for a junior golfer. I over-rotate my hips in the backswing. Give me any advice?
Teddy, junior golfer, he over-rotates his hips in the backswing. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen you swing, but I really do. If you're a keen golfer, I really would get, you know, a quality coach in your area if you can. I know everybody promotes themselves as a world expert, and it's difficult to tell, but see where some of the best juniors in your area are going. Usually there's 1 or 2 coaches in your city that most of the good juniors are seeing. It's a great thing to do. But in terms specifically of too much hip rotation in the backswing, I mean, what I would do is I'd cross my feet. You see my trail foot's in front of my lead foot. Make a few backswings like that, and what you'll find is you can't turn your hips very far. Now, what you're looking for is you're looking to create some resistance, some torque, some coil in your back when you're at about back to the target. So that feels like about as far as you could go, certainly at a resting position. your hips should be stable enough that you feel torqued at that point, but not so still that you just start lifting your arms and you can't turn. But that's an interesting drill. Right foot. Are you right-handed golfer? We're getting questions. Are you a right-handed golfer? If you could type that in, we'll address something for you.
What's the first move on the downswing?
Well, without doubt. There's so much anecdotal information out there, but now there's a lot more concrete information. That is to say, and I've been fortunate enough to be around some of these things quite a bit, force plates that measure where your pressure and weight is throughout the swing timed with high-speed video. Things like KVS, 3D motion capture machines that lots of pros have hit off, so they quantify, if you like, how the body's moving. So they really do have a pretty accurate sense of what's going on now. And that is to say, not all great players do it just the same, that's for sure. But generally speaking, if you're going to propel something a long way, picture it this way. If I have a towel, I like this example, big long towel, I want the far end of it, the end I'm not holding, to whip someone or something like that. I have to move the end farthest from that first. That creates stored energy, and then I have to decelerate that and snap it. So you want, when you start down, you want your core, your hips, your legs, a little bit of pressure in the ground to create that first impetus. Doesn't have to be a huge giant turn and a spin out, but if that isn't moving first, you're just not going to hit the ball very far. You get a quarterback in the NFL that's got his legs held, see how far he can throw it. It's not that your hips move so quickly, but when they move in the right sequence, they store energy. So it's this segment, segment 2's trunk, then arms and club in that sequence. That's how you see it in tennis and in baseball. Now, listen, my own swing tendencies, I tend to shift my hips too much. So for me, it's not that I'm trying not to leave my hips, I have to feel them much more stable. Most golfers don't shift them enough. So you've got to delineate that through what your tendencies are, but it is definitely lower body, trunk, arms, club, if you're going to be an effective ball striker and hit it a long way. And one other comment, by the way. Picture a towel again. When I move this, the bend of the towel is significant. When you can separate this segment from this, in other words, the longest hitters in the world really separate segments. They don't move everything together. Some of that's flexibility, some of it's athletic instinct, but you not only do you have to lead with your hips, but they have to separate a little bit from the other parts of the body.
All right, so we've been talking about the slice. So we have a few questions about pulling. So I was asking Macy, she's a young female junior golfer.
Hey Macy.
So she's pulling it to the left. So I asked her if it was low to the left, so she's obviously pull hooking it. So how would you fix a pull hook or a hook? The opposite of the slice.
We're sure it's curving left as well. We're not sure, but we
I think it's pull hook down to the left.
Usually a decent
Low
young
left.
junior player is much more likely to hit it left by hooking it, pull hooking it, than they are by coming over the top. Plus, if you were really coming over the top, you'd pull some balls, but you'd hit a whole lot of shots that would slice back to the right as well. So you're probably not doing that. So honestly, Macy, it's not a bad sign. I think there's exceptions to this, but I think generally speaking, until someone goes through a period of time where they lag it, they get it maybe trapped behind them and they over-rotate the club, they're probably never going to get to that really, really top stage. So it's not the end of the world as a junior golfer. But that said, what we have to try to time up, in other words, hey listen, we were just talking to someone, hips lead, then body, then club, arms, then club. But still, when you hit it, those arms need to be right in front of you, roughly off your left leg or left hip like that. A lot of flexible young juniors, especially girls, because they're more flexible usually, they whip these hips out, the arms don't catch up, and when the arms trail too much, the club tends to flip to catch up. That very well could be it for a young junior golfer. So I would practice some little shots, take an 8 or a 9 iron, just a mid-back swing, and hit a good firm shot, but try to stop shortly after impact like that. So come to a very abrupt short stop. Obviously you're not going to get full distance. It's difficult to do. You'll have to do a little bit of practice. But you can be sure of this. If you're able to hit a shot with a bit of speed, this happens to be one drill I'm reasonably good at, so I'm going to take my opportunity to show you. See how quickly I could stop that? The only way you can stop that quickly is core strength and abdominals and glutes and all. You're not going to stop it with your hands. So it requires that there's good timing.
He's
Your
got a
hips
10
lead.
pack.
But if that thing isn't in the right spot where your triceps close to you, it's difficult to stop it. So I'd start with that drill, and in a feel way, if you can stop it like that, you're probably going to not see too many hooks going forward. Hope that helps. Again, not such a bad thing for a junior golfer though.
Okay, so we have a very common
Yeah.
problem that everybody has, and we haven't touched on it in this session.
Okay.
So, how can we stop hitting behind the ball?
Okay.
Chunking, it's such a common thing that everyone has. What would you recommend for not hitting behind the ball, taking a
I'd say
fat shot?
there's sort of two categories. The less common one, but nonetheless, is the big, deep, stuck in the ground divot, often behind the ball. That's usually a sign of steepness. That's why it sticks in the ground. But that's not the most common one that I see. The most common one that I see is more of a drop kick, a graze, consistently bottom out behind the ball. When they do hit a shot solidly, it's kind of picked off the ground. Rarely will they ever see any divot in front of the ball. That's the most common one. There's really two variables, if you like, on that. Let me put the ball in front of me. Basically, bear this in mind. The club always reaches low point, divot point, when it gets to vertical. That's as low as the circle ever gets, then it starts up again. So it's your job to make sure the club is vertical post-impact. Again, you have to have an understanding. The club's built to lean forward a bit at impact, so vertical's after contact. Two real variables on that. One, where your weight is. Now we want the head pretty still, but if your weight's more forward, you probably reach vertical more forward. And the other is where your wrists straighten out. The earlier they straighten, the sooner I hit the ground, because the swing gets too wide and the club gets to vertical too soon. So make some little practice swings. Get a ball in front of you like this. Don't aim at the ball, just be next to it so you can tell relative to the ball where you hit the ground or the mat. Glide a little to your left side. Let the club load and feel like you snap your wrist straight more in this area. You'd be surprised without a ball how relatively easy that is to do. But what happens to a lot of people, they get up here, they rip the club down, their weight doesn't shift, the wrist straighten out, and then they have a career of hitting behind the ball. So don't let that be you. Glide left, pop the wrist so that you strike the mat over the left, and then just try it on a small scale. Bump a few 40, 50 yard 9-irons. You should be able to work your way out of it. I think that was our most popular, for a long time, most viewed YouTube video, was how to stop hitting behind the ball.
It still is.
It is
number
still
one.
So if you go to YouTube, Scratch Golf Academy, how to stop hitting behind the ball, give you some other thoughts and suggestions on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How to stop coming from inside, resulting in hooks.
Okay, then we
Is that
talked about,
is that what we just touched on? Or?
yeah, not so much. We talked about this about 20 minutes ago with someone. Generally, this is the problem experienced by a relatively low handicap.
That was me earlier.
That was scary a little while ago. But generally what happens is, I get this a little bit. As I say, there's two things that usually happen, one or the other. Either the hips push forward and the club tends to get stuck behind you this way. Probably more commonly, the trunk, the upper trunk for this level of play. You can be sure if you're hitting from the inside and hooking it, you can be 99% sure you're getting your legs going. But what happens is the trunk doesn't turn enough, the club comes down, and it gets stuck behind you. In fact, we were telling slicers earlier, get the club down more so you don't come over the top. You've got to get this thing turning. I gave the analogy a little while ago. If I was throwing this club at that black felt, or rather if I'm aiming at that, but I was throwing it at the couch, where do you think my trunk would be when I threw this at the couch? Back to camera. So you've got to get this thing turning more. I'm not trying to come out here, but if this thing is more turned, the club is going to be more over here. If it's less turned and it's coming down, it's going to get stuck behind you. So make some practice swings where you really get this way and get your upper body turning. Have you seen Jordan Spieth on TV lately? I haven't seen him just in the last few weeks. He may still be doing it. He's making these practice swings where he goes to the top and kind of stops.
Yeah,
and then he just makes this pile cut across it practice swing. Was he doing that recently?
Yeah, at the Masters.
That is not that uncommon for a really elite player to do that, because athletic elite players almost always get the club more stuck than they do over the top. So you'll see Corey Pavin was the first to really do that. He used to make these ridiculous looking practice swings. All they're doing is exaggerating something to get the feel. So get that thing turning, the club shouldn't get stuck behind you.
We got Isaac. Hey Adam.
Hi, Isaac.
I'm working on getting the hips working the way they should in the downswing. I'm wondering how long I have to keep focusing on them before it becomes fairly automatic.
Wow, that's how long do you have to keep focusing on the good hip action until it becomes fairly automatic? There's a lot of thoughts out there about how to do that. I mean, how long that takes, X amount of reps, this and that. I think that depends a lot, honestly, on the engagement of the person working on it. So first thing I would say, and unfortunately, Isaac, I can't see you swing. The first thing, are you working on the right thing? You know, the hips first is correct, but are you moving them correctly? And secondly, are some of the other ducks in a row, or are there some things that are preventing you from, you know, positions or whatnot that are kind of preventing you from moving the hips properly? So if you've got the positions good enough that your hips, you know, are in a position to move well, if you're rehearsing it correctly, then, hey, you know, let me just say this. This maybe isn't going to be helpful to you. Maybe it'll be depressing. But I have found for people that really make progress in their game, let's say someone like me. I've been playing golf 45 years. I'm, you know, a pro or whatever. I have some things, some stubborn things left over from when I was a youngster that are still in there. Now, I do it okay most of the time, but when I struggle, it's one of those couple of things. Other things are always good in my swing, and I've yet to meet the top player. I worked for David Leadbetter for a long time. I've been around Nick Faldo, Nick Price, Charles Howell, a lot of these types of players, at least while David was teaching them. They have them too, I'm telling you. They're just not broadcasting them on TV. Nick Faldo, Sir Nick, he's helping you with lag shot, right? Nick had a real tendency, when he was in the thick of winning his 6 majors, to get his hips too much this way in the backswing, and they'd slide too far to the left, and that was a real challenge for him. Now, a lot of players, a lot of mid-handicaps, that isn't a challenge, but for him, that was a challenge. So when you're talking about getting something, I think, in my experience of teaching people, sometimes, hey, something, you organize it, you sort something out, and within a couple of weeks, they don't see that problem again. Other things begin to fall, but there's always something that's a little stubborn that's stuck in there, so I'm not sure which category you'll be in with your hips, but be patient with yourself, I guess, is the lesson.
Lucky Luke is asking some good questions
Lucky
here,
Luke.
Luke. Good job, Luke. So Luke is asking, what's the desired swing speed? Does it change per shot, per distance?
Generally speaking, as quickly as you can possibly make it.
100. So he's asking, should I make it 100% all the time?
No, I don't think that's the case. A couple of comments on that. Hey, as a ground level, speed is great. Listen, I don't know much about basketball, but would you rather be 6'10" or 6'2"? Probably 6'10" if you really like basketball. Would you rather play golf with 115 miles an hour of driver speed or 95? 95's not that bad. 115. So you have to be somewhat aggressive to really shoot low scores. I don't think you're absolutely maxing out your short irons and wedges for sure, but it's still got to have speed. So here's the thing. Speed is great. Now the way they train for speed now, and let's assume your technique is good, you're fairly fit, or you get more fit or whatever. One of the things they have really found in baseball, golf, the training, is until you experience more speed, you don't know what it feels like, you won't be able to do it. Now it sounds overly simplistic, so they have training tools now, speed sticks, we've done some work with them, different weighted swinging clubs, they're not actual clubs, they just have weights on the end. So they get you to swing the light one as fast as you can possibly swing it. You can hear the air swoosh about this far above the ground. Speed sticks are great. There's a whole training protocol with them. Then they get the one that's slightly heavier than your club, slightly lighter than your club, and you see if you can get the same speed and when then one that's slightly heavier, and again, fight for the speed. Now what happens, once you've done your speed training, could be 5-10 minutes, you back off and you go back to normal speed again. But they find if you do these little humped practice sessions, not every hour, but 3 times a week or so, where you really fire up the speed and then come down, your normal rest speed starts to get higher. So when you're not feeling like you're swinging as hard as you can, it's quicker than it was 2 months ago. So yes, speed's great, train for it, but you shouldn't, when playing, feel like you're swinging as hard as you can. Let's say that.
So I have to give a little plug for our own company, okay?
Let's do it.
Because lag shot is a little bit heavier of a club, both for the driver and the iron, and that will help you with your swing speed. We had David Mobley, 5-time long distance champion. He was hitting with the driver for the first time here ever. And he made the comment,
I wasn't available that day.
yeah,
so
he wasn't here, so we had a long drive champion coming. But he was carrying this 333 yards.
Jeez.
But what he said after that, when he went to his clubs, he said, wow, my swing speed is improved. And we have the quad here. And another person asked what we recommend as a launch monitor.
Well, that's great.
TrackMan or the Foresight Quad is what I would recommend personally. But when he was here, he was able to gain 4 miles an hour of swing speed.
That's a lot.
Just
For
using
someone like
the
that.
lag shot driver. So the lag shot driver is a
So yeah, it can work
swing
both ways.
speed increasing
You
tool.
work hard at something, and then
Yeah.
you get the lighter thing in your hand, it goes quicker. The other way, you get the super speed with the light, and then try to duplicate it with something normal weight. Believe me, these guys on the tour and the gals on the tour, they train for speed now. Statistics, modern statistics, which are really well crunched out because they have shot link data, they can measure shots before they get hit. You ever seen a PGA Tour telecast and they say, I think he's about 150 yards? Never. 157 yards, because they laser it. So the stats have proven out, like height in basketball, and you got to be able to play golf, but the faster you can swing, the bigger the edge you have on the other players.
So just to go back to what Lucky Luke had said, he also asked, or reduced for more control. So yes, for
Yeah,
more
listen,
control,
hey, if
of
it's the
course.
18th hole, you got a 2-shot lead, and you got to get to the clubhouse, don't swing as hard as you can. But that's not generally the case. Hey, if you're in between clubs on a 9-iron, sure, but generally speaking, speed. Okay, anything else?
Sandy apart.
Wrap it up here in a minute.
How to stop topping, her name's Sandia. How to stop topping the ball with the sand wedge when chipping onto the green.
Sandy, and she's
blading it.
blading the ball with sandwich. Let me get my sandwich here. Well, I said something about fairway wood play or wood play earlier. Generally, what I see, we're talking maybe a 15-yard pitch near the green probably. Generally, what I see is one of two things. Either players scoop a little too much. Once that club head passes the hands, you got the blade looking right at the golf ball. The handle has to be forward a little bit to hit it with the club head, unless you got a lot of cushion under the ball. An old buddy of mine, Andrew Rice, well-known teacher, one of his little favorite pithy sayings is, on every sand wedge or lob wedge, a 3-iron lives at the very bottom edge of it. You got 2 clubs in one. That's why they're so expensive. So number one, handle a little ahead of club head. But on the flip side of that, in effect, when people either have too much hands ahead so they could dig the club, or they're too choppy so they could dig the club this way, once their subconscious senses we're headed for dig, you get a bailout and a backup, and then you can really get that. So if you mix some chunky ones with some thin ones, that's probably you. If you just hit it either well or thin, you're probably more of the scooping variety.
It's awesome. We had a couple people say, dang it, I missed it. You tuned in a little late.
Can they go back and watch it somewhere else?
You can.
So on YouTube, this will be replayed on YouTube. Everybody on TikTok, please, this is Adam Bazalgette. You've seen him on our TikTok channel.
Hello.
Scratch Golf Academy, we have, 430,000 subscribers on YouTube now.
We do.
We have tons of information there, all kinds of playlists and categories. Go to Scratch Golf Academy YouTube channel, and you will get lots of good instruction from the greatest instructor that I've ever came across. This is the guy, for sure.
We're brothers.
Make sure you subscribe. You'll get those alerts so you'll know when we're going live. And make sure you download the mobile app. Scratch Golf Academy has a mobile app. We'll be push notifying right to your phone that you're going to be going live, and you won't miss this again. But we loved having you
with
today.
your game and your questions, and sometimes other people ask questions, and then we get an answer, and you might think, geez, that applies to me too. So it's not just
So
your question.
stay tuned through the whole thing, because lots of tips and information come out at different times that could really help you. But we're going to end it for now. Thank you so much. It's been
Thank
an
you, folks.
hour and 10 minutes. We hope you enjoyed this. We're going to try to do this once a month here at the Lag Shot Studio. We might make it out to a Mediterra on location maybe someday. Maybe we'll go over to the Scratch Golf Academy studios and do this as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for
Thanks,
your
guys.
support.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, sir. Cheers.
Thanks for the help, guys. Are we still on? Are we off? I don't want to.